This is Justin. Welcome back to Tea with the Vivi. And today we have on a guest who I believe we met before briefly a while ago. I think we met through Brandy. I think we were at the coffee shop and we kind of
Yeah.
got to say hi to each other. I know we didn't get to talk that much that day. But this is a very high performing person. And even though we don't know each other super well personally, at least I think we're kind of in touch on social media, and I've seen him kind of continue to go up and up and up, which is awesome. This is somebody who's doing a lot of exciting things and doing very, very well. So it's always fun to have on people that are, more and more high performing. It's like the demographic that I really enjoy working with, because the more results we're dealing with, the more every little improvement really shows a big return, which is exciting. So I'm going to let him introduce himself. It's just one person for today. And then as I told him before we get started, our goal is to make as much progress as we can in the time we have together. And that by the end of us talking today, that you'll kind of have very specific things that you can go and do and execute that are like, okay, if I go do this, is going to help me. So that's the goal. So I'll let him introduce himself and a little bit your name, what you do, maybe brief backgrounds, kind of like 60-second version or whatever you want to share, so people know
Okay.
kind of who they're listening to, and we can get into it.
Yeah. I appreciate to be on here. So yeah, my name is John Powell. I'm a broker owner of First Class Real Estate Level Up. We are a brokerage that serves pretty much greater Tampa and greater Orlando area. Actually, my background before I got into real estate is in law enforcement. I was in law enforcement for 10 years prior to getting into real estate. And, I didn't realize at the time just the similarities between law enforcement and real estate, but it's kind of actually been a seamless transition. So it's been pretty cool to see that. But yeah, I have a wife and a boy and a girl, 3 and 8-month-old. So definitely have my hands full with running the business and then having the family. So
Just really briefly, obviously, I was sharing with you off camera, but just kind of the quick version for the people who are watching. I say that the things that I help with are performance and fulfillment. And I love the definition from Earl Nightingale, where he says success is the pursuit of a worthy ideal, right? So this is for the people that are watching. I know I just explained for you, but that, if we know what we want and we're going for, we're successful. And the great thing about that definition is this is also where happiness and fulfillment comes from, which I think is what we ultimately all want. So I always tell people and briefly mention on the show, I'm not a business coach, but the things that I do are very performance oriented. So there's a very real significant money return to this. But really, as we're pursuing that worthy ideal, whatever it is for us, everything changes, right? So people's health gets way better, their romantic life gets better, their confidence, self-esteem, everything goes up. And there's a lot of business and personal life returns for all of those things. So that's a little bit of how I help. What questions do you have for me? Obviously, I mean, I know you're a very high performing person already. You're doing awesome already. You're selling a lot, you're recruiting people. I mean, I can see that there's all different places that someone can be in, and you obviously already have what looks like a lot of momentum. I mean, I know social media doesn't always tell the whole story of our lives, right?
right.
Um,
Yeah.
but you definitely seem like you have momentum. Seems like things are going really well. Where are the areas where you feel maybe tripped up, or where your frustrations are, your discouragements are, the dissatisfaction is of like what do I do next, or how do I approach this, or why is this not clicking the way I want it to? And hopefully with the time we have, I can try to help as much as I can.
Yeah, I kind of back to what I was saying about the details of everything. Like, I'm not a very detail oriented person, very task oriented, like, checking my, task off the list type thing. But, just, with business and like, that's one thing I don't really have a great business sense, but, that has been a struggle with learning just, counting and bookkeeping and P&L and just, having a profitable business, because my passion is more about the person, and the face to face and just how I can help them and serve them. So that's something that's definitely been a struggle with just, I guess the details, and then kind of let them consume my day. And then, some things I don't get done that I had scheduled to do, and it's just, then it's the next day, and then it just continues to spiral. And so it's like I said, it's easy to get off track by, all the different details between and recruiting and, production and just everything, so
Yeah.
so basically I've maybe just like a common advice on uh narrowing down, or kind of having more intentional focus,
Yeah.
for the day. So
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. I mean, and I think that's a question a lot of people have, especially the more pieces you're playing with, I think, because it's, there's more things vying for your attention. I think something that will help you in that is I, I think there's I think there's sort of two pieces. The first is like getting extremely clear on, you know, the ideal outcome of each of those things, like micro and macro, like
right.
what is it you want from each of those categories if they're perfect, like today, this month, this year kind of thing. And then
Hmm.
where is your 10% in each of those things that is giving you your 90% return? You're familiar with 80/20 rule?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I know you're deep into all these things. So I figured, yeah. So,
Yes.
living in the 10% of each of those things that is giving you the outcome of each of those things. I think that all of us waste a lot of time, including me probably. And, obviously 80/20 rule for people that don't know it that are listening, 80% of results come from 20% of our efforts. So there's 20% of things we're doing that really matter, which is more like 90/10, most people believe. So, a lot of times throughout our day, we're not really in that 10%. And part of it
Mm.
is maybe we don't want to do it or they're the uncomfortable things. I think part of it is that we don't always have enough clarity of what our outcomes really are in a way that's sharp enough that we could really define our 10% in the first place. You know,
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
so I think for someone like you that you might feel, and not to put words in your mouth, but maybe you might feel that there's not always like literally physically enough time in your day to do all that stuff, but
Hmm.
there is time to do the 10% of each of those categories, so
Right.
what how you want things to be going with your wife, like what is the 10% time with her and making sure you get to that for the week. What is
Hmm.
what is your 10% time with your kids? What is your like recruiting wise, building the business, like what's the 10% time there that has to happen, like with your own production, what's the 10% time? And sort of giving yourself a pass on all the 90% time, either like really minimizing it or almost like not doing it at all, because if you're really living in the 10%, then it's an enormous multiple. So I would say don't be too hard on yourself, just always knowing what the 10% is for you. And if you're getting to that across all categories, I mean, you're crushing it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I'm definitely more on a perfectionist by nature. So,
Yeah.
it's definitely easy to be, hard on myself or, think I'm not doing enough or, so it's just that, again, it's just a constant flexing of that mindset, a positive mindset to just stay in track. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely easy as, and then having small kids in the mix of it. And so, you hear, oh, you need to have a set morning routine and all this stuff, and there's no routine, having kids.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's definitely been a learning process to adapt, because ultimately, I want my family first, but at the same time, it's hard to shut the business off, and so you're just constantly thinking of different things I can do or things I need to do, and like again, it gets all consuming, or can be.
Yeah, I mean, and it's sort of, as far as the business stuff is concerned, and I guess personal life stuff too, it's kind of unlimited, right? Which is
Yeah,
one of the
right.
things that makes it get tricky and overwhelming, is like there's always a million more things you could be doing. Um,
Right.
I mean, since it's the two of us and since we have time, and just to kind of make this as valuable for you as possible, and then for the people listening, I think it's cool too. Why don't we go into more detail? Because the more detail we go into, the more it's going to be valuable for you. So let's say there's all these different categories that you're referring to, right? Why don't we just start with one? Like, what is a category that you feel like is maybe being neglected the most or giving the most frustration or dissatisfaction, and we can start with that and figure out, okay, how exactly do we want that to be going? Identifying the 10%, and maybe we can just knock some of this stuff out so you can kind of go out of here like, okay, cool, like this makes sense. Like I can use this now.
Right. So I feel like overall it's just more growing growing pains of our brokerage. Getting actually, my goal is not to be in production as a broker,
Okay.
because I like to. My passion is really to serve the agents and give back. And I feel like if I'm doing my own production, it's going to take away time for me serving the agents. So that's
Okay.
just my personal goal, is to be out of production. It's just then having agents, and enough agents to then be able to step away from production. So it's just in this limbo land of recruiting, but then still maintain production to
Right.
continue to have income and cash flow coming in. And
Right.
then
It's like a
so this
certain
is
point,
balance.
right?
Yeah,
Like a
exactly right.
diminishing returns, like,
Right. So
but you don't
that's
want to
where
do too
my
little because then that's not good either. So
right, exactly. So that's kind of where my biggest pain point is currently,
okay.
with balancing my time between trying to limit production and focus on recruiting more full time. So
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, it's good that you even have clarity of that, because I think a lot of brokers probably don't. Um,
yeah,
so
yeah.
okay. So how much, trying to think, there's like sometimes there's like multiple questions in my head at the same time. Um, how much would you need to be making from the agents, or however you want to say that, to step out of your own personal production? Like, do you have
So
a number in mind that you'd like to be at?
I mean, I would actually, the actual brokerage, making about 20,000 netting a month, for being out of production.
Okay. Um, and then what is the structure like of, like, is there certain like monthly or quarterly or yearly fees, or like, just so we can get a sense of like the specifics of this, is there a certain amount the agents pay per month, or?
Yeah, as far as the agents, like their monthly fee, you're saying?
Yeah, yeah, or however you structure that. I know all brokerages are different.
Yeah, so yeah, they have a $100 a month tech fee, basically, is what they pay per month.
Oh,
Um, and then we have, as far as two different models, as far as split model, or a 100% model, a flat fee, flat transaction fee type thing.
okay. Um, I mean, I know with agents it's tricky, right? Because it's like there's a certain percentage that really produce, and there's most of them that don't, unless you're really recruiting everyone that's a producer already. Um,
Right. Yeah, you can't guarantee production.
yeah, you
So,
can't.
it's really up to the actual individual to take action on what we're giving them.
Right. So I guess maybe the next question is how much is coming net from the brokerage now, so we know like what the gap is. Obviously I know that's not all the money you're making because you have a lot of high production yourself, but just to get a sense of how close you are, where is that at now, at least on the brokerage side, compared to where you want to be?
Um, so we're actually around 25% of that for agent production.
Okay. Okay, cool. So, and how many agents do you have right now?
We are 10 of us right now.
Okay, so it's averaging as of right now $500 per agent per month brokerage net.
Right.
So if we did that math at the current amounts, that would be $20,000. I should probably be able to do that in my head, but I can't. 40. So if you had 40 agents at current, I'm just taking notes if you get it, just in
Yeah.
case it looks awkward.
It's awkward. No, it's all
Uh,
good.
40 agents at current production would allow you to step away from the brokerage. Um, or another way to look at that would be if the agents multiplied their production by 4, right?
Right.
Agents multiply production by 4 could step away. Or if you had 20 agents and doubled production, right?
Right.
So that's not super far away. When did you start this? I know it's recent. I just don't remember like
Yeah,
exactly.
December of last year is when we actually launched officially.
Okay, so December 2021. Um, let's see. So it's a little less than a year away. I mean, you're not that far. I think I think that I mean, you know better than me the details, right? But you could definitely double the production of your agents, because most agents are
Yeah.
producing like nowhere near what they could be. So if you
Right.
have like another 10 agents and you doubled everyone's productions, then you're
Right.
there.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. I know we're on that route, and like you were mentioning, having momentum, and we definitely have a great amount of momentum and upward trajectory for just agents in pipeline who are newer agents that are just passing their state exam and whatnot. But so I know we'll definitely get there fairly quickly. I just want like that.
Yeah, yeah. No,
So
we all do. I
yeah,
want
right.
that too for what I'm doing.
Yeah, right.
I mean, of like looking at those numbers, my gut feeling is the fastest way to be able to get there is to get 10 more agents and double all their production,
Yeah.
you know?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know the recruiting is really where my main focus is, because that really is where it's what's going to help, be able to get out of production. So,
Yeah.
that's where my majority of my time right now is spent, recruiting, networking. So, it's probably about, 10% right now that I'm really focusing on my own production. So,
Okay. So you're already 90% recruiting, but you want to be 100%?
yeah, so it's just I still have these I'm not actively prospecting for my own production,
Yeah.
so it's basically just deals here and there that have been trickling in, and just kind of being able to manage while I'm actually running the agent, or running the business and training agents and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. When do you maybe you have a goal already, but when would you like to be at that completely out of production number by?
um my ideal, I mean, it definitely is going to be next year, but as far as quarter wise, um I'm hoping around like the second quarter, between the second and third quarter of the year next year.
Okay.
That would be a pretty I feel like we'll pretty, with the momentum we're having, everything, I feel like we'll be there, probably before the half of the year.
Okay. So if you were going the same pacing as you've gone so far, you've done this in 8 months, right? Because it was December,
Yeah.
October, November, December, or you've done this in 9 months, let's
Well,
say.
keep in mind, my daughter was born in January, which I don't recommend starting a business and then, you know. So my daughter was born in January, so I pretty much took off January, February, and most of March. I didn't do hardly anything, and so then I didn't really start really actively recruiting and really getting back into it until around April or so. So, um,
So April,
so
May, June, July, August, September. So you've done this in 5 or 6 months, kind of.
right, yeah, exactly. So.
Okay. So if you went at the same pacing, um, and you're at a quarter of that, that would be 20 months. But obviously you don't want to do that. I don't know what's a timeline that freaks you out a little bit, because I find that you want to set it in a way that you feel like is in the realm of possibility, but also is like, oh shit, like, is that
Right. Well, that's
possible?
why
Like,
I absolutely feel like, by the end of second quarter is very manageable, and it's still, based on, it's still scaling pretty quickly as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's what, we're almost in October, so that's what, another 8 months from now. So that's basically cutting that time in half almost from what if I stay the current trajectory.
Yeah. That sounds good. I mean, that sounds like aggressive but doable, you know?
Right.
So what would be a day? So I'm a big fan of making things like extremely, extremely clear. I love to give my people the analogy of Google Maps, right? So if you put hotel in Google Maps, you know, it will generate a bunch of options, but it doesn't really know what you mean, and it won't really give you directions, and you'll stay there. And again, you know all this stuff, but sometimes it's just like a reminder and like tweaking tiny little things. If you
Hmm.
put an exact address in Google Maps, it can get you like the other freaking side of the planet. And it will even
Right.
tell you, go to this airport, you know, fly to this airport. So I think there's a big difference between saying, even though this sounds small, but it's like it's not a matter of our mind not being able to get us there. It's just a matter of like putting it in the proper way where our mind kind of clicks. So if you
Hmm.
say sometime in this quarter or that quarter, it's good, but it still feels kind of like nebulous in your
Right.
mind.
Exactly.
But let's pick an exact day where you say like, I am completely out of production by blah 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 day this month 2023. Because when that happens, your mind sort of, there's almost like a switch, and you start looking like, okay, how would I do that, how would I do that? And we really get another level of production when from our mind when it's that clear. There's a quote from Einstein, which is paraphrased by Brian Tracy, where he says, your goals should be so clear. And again, I'm a work in progress too, right? These are all easy to
Right.
say, hard to do.
Yeah.
but
Exactly.
but that your goals should be so clear that you could explain them to a child, and that child could explain it to another child, and that other
Right.
child could draw a picture of what you just said.
Right.
So by that
Exactly.
definition, almost none of us have anywhere near the clarity that we should.
Right.
So
Right.
let's pick a day. There's another quote by Brian Tracy where he says, "There's no such thing as unrealistic goals, only unrealistic timelines." Right. So
Right.
let's say you
Exactly.
set a day and it's not exactly where you want to be. Even if you're off by a month or two or three or four, it's still effective to set the day, and you could always move the day. But when you have a specific day, there's like a bloop, like you almost feel a physical click, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, like, I feel like that is kind of almost like my safety net of like that. Yeah, I'll definitely get that. But honestly, I'm more than likely gonna drop out of production, just
Sooner.
doing it, just because like it's too much, too time consuming to be maintaining own production
Yeah.
while doing it. So it's
Yeah.
literally like as of you know basically as these current deals close and get finalized, like that's really when I'm just like gonna do it, like that, like I feel like the second to third quarter, really that goal is really having that net, that consistent production of 20,000 at least, or a consistent profit of 20,000 is really uh is really, I guess that's what my ultimate goal is, at a minimum, of having the business without me having to be in it. But really, I guess at the very start, I really wasn't clear on, to be able to production is basically, I need my bills paid, or need the expenses paid for. So like, the
Yeah.
20,000 is just a comfortable minimum to have as profit for the company.
Yeah.
But as far as actually getting out of production, I could easily get out of production, like now, once like
Okay.
these deals are done. So I feel like
Okay.
I should probably clarify the overall, like, to be able to get out of production, I can do a lot quicker, and I will do a lot quicker, just because then allow me to then focus 100% of the time on, recruiting and just the activities to help grow the business, instead of, my own production. So the
Okay.
actual goal is to be actually at a minimum of 20,000,
Uh-huh.
just as netting, the office netting.
Okay. Well, that's good for us to know. So then,
Yeah.
so you're bringing in 5,000 net without your personal production, and you're wanting to basically, it sounds like, get out of the personal production, maybe ASAP. Um, is the 5,000 enough for what you feel comfortable having come in, or is there a small amount over that?
Yeah, it's probably so about like 7,000 or so is really like all like just to be able to completely have everything taken care of.
So really, so 20 is like a short-term ideal, but 7,000 is really what you'd actually need.
Yeah, to get out of production. But yeah, as far as to have a business that's just consistently doing 20 grand netting a month is definitely ideal. That's a good starting point. And obviously, my goal is definitely to really grow the brokerage and to grow multiple locations as well.
Okay. So 2,000, if you're getting 500 per agents per month net, that'd be 4 more agents.
Right,
Or you could slightly increase the production of the agents you have.
right.
When do you want to set a goal? What about by January 1st, you're out of production?
Yeah, I mean that's a very realistic. So and so yeah, to pick an actual concrete date, we'll
Yeah.
just pick January 1st. So because
Okay.
that's really what I was thinking anyways, because this first 9 months or however long we've been in so far has been a learning process. And again, now we're in this upward trend of really kind of getting those train wheels going, type thing. And
Yeah.
so now starting January 1st is really where I feel like we're gonna scale quickly.
So I want you to write this down. Do you have a pen?
Yeah.
So write down, I am completely out of production by January 1st, 2023. Again, I know these things sound simple and I know that you know them, but even though they sound simple, there's still a big difference between, oh, probably second or third quarter be out and like want the 20 grand versus, oh, well, maybe I really only need 2 grand, maybe it can be sooner. And okay, 7 grand netting, I'm going to be there by January 1st, 2023. It's like there's something that happens. It's hard to explain. I don't know if any of us could really explain why that is, that our mind just totally shifts into a different gear when it's that clear. But I
Right.
really, really find that to be true. And it's like when it's that clear, it's like your subconscious is working on it, even when your conscious is not. So even when you're going throughout your day or hanging out with your kids or your wife, somewhere in there, your mind is like, how am I going to do this by January 1st, 2023? And it's like searching, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally, it definitely makes it more concrete and just more, it's in your subconscious that, you're going to do those things you need to do type thing to, to actually accomplish it, because we're our own worst like enemy or critic. And so, or, so we're kind of competing against ourselves every day. So, having that written down and writing it down and putting pen to paper is really important.
Yeah, I mean, another thing that's really valuable too about writing stuff down, I said this to somebody yesterday on the show, is that um human beings, we feel a really big need to act consistent with who we are. And
Hmm.
so whenever we don't feel too good about that, right? And so
Yeah.
when we write something down, one of the cool or powerful things about that is that if we don't do it and if we're not going towards it, then we sort of have to know that we're not really who we say.
Right.
We really, really don't like that. So it's very
Right.
powerful to have it that clear and written, because now it's like, oh shit, if I always have to act consistent with who I say I am, and I just said that I am this, there's like this added pressure of like,
Yeah.
now I have to do it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Totally.
I think that the thing that I can help with the most with now is where I would always start with my clients one-on-one is their state. So state is like your level of focus, energy, vibrancy you show up in the world with day to day, moment to moment. So if you think of like Michael Jordan, game 7, peak state, shows up, wins the championship. You think of a lot of these athletes, who if they go out there, they don't show up, it's clear they're mentally checked out, they get stomped on, they lose, right?
Right.
So, and you may be already very good at this because coming from law enforcement, you probably have to be good at this. But um, I have this rule for my people where I say our results in life are always going to be in direct proportion to our state. So let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, your state is a 3. Your results consistently, business and personal, are not going to really be beyond that. Maybe once in a while you might get a little higher, but there's a certain amount of energy required to get what we want. And the more what we want is up here, the more we really need to show up there to get it. And so
Hmm.
I always start with my people with this, because this is the first place that I see people getting stuck, right? Like, you could, for you or for your agents, you could have all the goals and plans in the world, but you need a certain amount of energy to do things, right? We need energy
Hmm.
to act.
Right.
And so, you know, in real estate, this was one of the first things that I changed that massively helped me. And I can just try to share the quick version with you in the time we have, and you could start to use this for your own life, but also with your agents. Because, for this stuff that I help people with, one of the good things about being a broker and learning these things is that you get to share it with everyone, and it multiplies, multiplies, multiplies. So,
Right.
um, in real estate, obviously, like we were talking about, it's full of uncomfortable things, right? Lead
Hmm.
generation, uncomfortable; keeping your backlog together, uncomfortable; buyer consultation, listing appointment,
Listing a point.
difficult, uncomfortable. So all of these things in real estate, to do them, it really requires showing up in a peak state, right?
Right. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
almost nobody does, right?
Hmm.
It's very, very rare that someone is like actually managing their state at a 10. And so just wanted to share a couple things that I kind of share usually, so you can start to have them and tweak them, and use them with your people. Because if you can fix that, that's going to be a gigantic, gigantic return. Um,
Hmm.
so first, I would say, for yourself and for your people, you can ask them, where would you feel like you're showing up on a scale of 1 to 10 right now? Business and personal, average throughout the day, past 3 to 6 months, right?
Hmm.
So we can do a little example version with you, and then you can kind of write this stuff down, and you can start to use this stuff again. I know that's going to be the very quick version, but it's going to be enough to get you thinking. And again, a lot of this stuff you probably know already, but maybe I can say it in a different way where something clicks and you're like, oh yeah, like
Right.
I can use that. That can help me.
Right.
So where would you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10? Business, personal, how you feel like you're showing up, where 10 is like very elite athlete, 1 is like severely depressed, anxious, whatever.
About 7.
Okay, good.
Hmm.
Good. So, and again, another valuable thing about these things, let's say for someone like you, right? So let's say only your personal production. And I'm sure you'll probably agree with this, because I know that you know these things, but um, you know, showing up for a listing appointment or lead generation or keeping backlog together, or recruiting or talking to your agents or training like, there's all these things that require a 10, right?
Right.
So
Exactly.
even though you're doing amazing, the difference between a 7 and a 10 is still a lot.
Right.
It's still the difference between getting the listing or not, the agents getting it or not, recruiting the agent or not, whatever, right? Um,
Hmm.
so then so you can ask your agents that. You could even do this activity with them and be like, or we have more time another time, or if you want to learn more, we can kind of do the slower version, but I'm just trying to get through everything and give you a little sample so you can see, oh,
Right.
I could do this with my people, not just with yourself. Um, the first 3 things I look at with the state, there's certain basic things that really, really impact our state a lot. And the first 3 that I use are eating, sleeping, and working out, right?
Hmm.
So all successful people do these. A lot of times we say that we don't have time for those things, right? Because we're busy, and I get that. But if the busiest people in the world with the most shit on their plate of anyone in the world has time to do it, we definitely have time to do it. And what it all
Right.
means is that if they're all doing it, they must think it's what I call a high ROI activity, right? It's in their
Right.
percent. It means that
Yeah. Exactly. Right.
the return must be so big, right?
Hmm.
So where would you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, eating and then sleeping and then working out? So eating, 10 would be very healthy, like right amount of calories for your body, whatever. 1 is like McDonald's all day, every day. Sleeping, 10 would be 8 hours a night, not going to sleep insanely late, sleeping well, waking up rested, whatever. 1 would be, tossing and turning, going to sleep at all these crazy times, not rested, whatever. Working out, I would say anything that's 4 or 5, maybe 5 times plus a week, probably a 10, very regular.
Right.
1 would be 0, which I could tell physically from your body, you're definitely not that.
Yeah.
Um, so where would you rate yourself there? And then this is helpful because as we're doing it with you, you can kind of see, oh, okay, I could ask my people these things.
Yeah. I feel like I'm pretty good about like, about an 8 to, so 8 for sleep is probably about 8.
Uh-huh.
Having kids and stuff is not
Mhm.
the ideal, but slowly get in there. But food wise, I'd say 8 as well.
Mhm.
And then yeah, I think 8's all across the board for
Okay.
that.
Awesome. So eating, sleeping, working out. I have a couple others that are these basic things, right? I always look at these first because whenever a state is not a 10, typically there's things in these basics that can be improved where when we improve them, our state tends to improve as well.
Yeah,
So
right.
there's other things too, but this is where I start because you kind of start at the beginning and usually people aren't even doing those things, right?
Right.
Which you are doing those things to a
Right.
very, very large extent.
Hmm.
The next ones I have, there's a couple. So eating, sleeping, working out, clean home, clean car, right? So I find, and these might sound silly, but I find that and I'm guilty of all these things, right? It's easy to slip up, but I find that when our home is not clean or our car is not clean, it really does seem to have an effect on us and how we show up. And I think the most you notice it is when you do something about it, like you clean your home or you clean your car, it looks beautiful, and you're like, wow, I feel different. I feel different. I feel better. I think a lot of life is us convincing ourselves that we are who we say. And
Right.
I think when our home's dirty and our car's dirty, we sort of have this moment of like, like, am I really who I say? Look at my home. Look at, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, 10 would be in each of those categories, looking very, very good vast majority of the time. One would be terrible.
Yeah, so obviously, again, having kids that can definitely have toys and crap everywhere. But I mean, I feel like we do a pretty good job by picking up by the end of the night, so that way wake up, with a clean home. So I'd say about 8 for that, and then 9, actually probably 10, honestly, for my car, my truck. Like I'm
Nice. That's awesome.
constantly, like pretty much every day or every other day, getting it washed. So just that, again,
Okay.
it's just something I like, having a clean vehicle, and I'm very OCD when it comes to that. So
Oh, that's good. That's a
yeah,
good thing to be OCD about.
right.
Um, and then the next one, there's two more of these basic things that I always look at that I find really impact our state a lot. One of them is grooming and self-presentation, which you look very on point. Um,
Hmm.
and then the other one is body language. So grooming and self-presentation, little more self-explanatory, right? But 10 would be, hair on point, cut frequently, looking fresh, beard, everything looks good, obviously, for you.
Right.
Vast majority of the time, one would be terrible, right? And then for body language, maybe a little less self-explanatory. This is something now you come from law enforcement, so you know way more about body language than the average person. I don't know if you
Right.
studied it past that or not, but you definitely probably have a lot of knowledge already. But when I say body language, 10 would be open, strong, confident, one would be, you know, lots of like arms crossed, lots of fidgeting, self-touching,
Yeah.
discipline, thumbs, like arms behind the back, legs behind the chair, whatever, right? So
Yeah.
I have a feeling you're extremely high in both of those categories.
Yeah.
Where would you like to rate yourself for those?
Yeah. I'd say, well, yeah, I mean, I'd say, yeah, 9 or 10. I mean, it's funny because that's something that even now, like, even though I haven't been in law enforcement for a few years, like
Yeah.
you have this like kind of certain stance, and like when
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
just it's just kind of nature, and kind of having a certain
Presence.
kind of a bladed stance, so to speak, and so yeah, it's just kind of innate, from doing it, and just kind of making sure you're aware, keeping your eyes on other people's body language and everything. Um, so yeah, I'd say a 9 or 10 for both of those.
Awesome. I guess I'll put like 9.5. Cool. So those scores are obviously very high, state overall 7. So there's a couple more things. Again, I'm just trying to go through as fast as possible, but there's a couple more reasons why I find that people don't show up at a 10. Um, One of them, so when I first started doing this and I was teaching people these things, for one thing, I found that when you add up all those numbers and you divide them, um, that number is the same as how people will rate their state overall.
Yeah.
And what that means is they're super highly correlated, right? Not
Hmm.
completely causal, but very high correlation with those things and how our state's doing. So those are our big.
Right.
Um, other reasons that people don't show up with their state. So when I first started helping people with this, I would ask them every single week, hey, what was your state on a scale of 1 to 10? And they would say, oh, it was a 7. I'd be like, okay, cool. Why wasn't it a 10? What is the gap there? What's happening?
Mhm.
And they would say things like, well, I I was feeling a little down or feeling a little out or feeling a little this, feeling a little that, whatever. And because of those things, I rate myself a 7. I say, okay, cool. I need to figure out a way to get people to a 10. And so I created this rule where I say state is not contingent on how you feel, right?
Mhm.
So there could be all of these feelings going on. And in real estate, there's all types of feelings going on.
Yeah, exactly.
But if state is not contingent on how we feel, if you imagine like yourself in the middle and there's all these feelings, 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 and you put X's on all of them, if it's not contingent on how you feel, all of a sudden you can show up way more, right? So you
Right.
can still show up even if the feelings aren't there. And I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of misunderstanding there. And then the next rule that I have, people would come to me, hey, what's your state on a scale 1 to 10? They say, oh, I was an 8. Like, okay, cool. Why weren't you a 10? Like, well, this thing happened in my life, and there was that thing that happened, and because of these different things that happened, I would rate myself an 8 instead of a 10. So I was like, okay, I need to create another rule here because I was seeing these
Mhm.
trends and patterns of people saying the same stuff. And I was like, okay, well, those are all circumstances. So I had this rule: state is not contingent on circumstance. So if
Mhm.
you imagine yourself and then there's circumstances, all these things, and you put X's over all of them, if state is not contingent on circumstance, meaning there can be all this shit going on around you, you still show up. Those
Mhm.
circumstances do not dictate whether you show up or not or how much you show up. You show up all the time regardless, right?
Mhm.
And then stage next. And then the final rule that I have that I created for people to kind of keep themselves at a 10 as often as possible is this idea of like mental repetitions. So
Mhm.
for example, many, many times throughout the day, your state's going to be going all these different directions. So to sort of notice it and like bring yourself back. And I say mental repetition because it's sort of uncomfortable. Like when someone first starts doing this, like you'll notice you're going off somewhere this way and it's like, it's like takes physical effort and you almost
Right.
feel a little exhausted by the effort. It feels almost like swimming through mud or something like that. It's
Right.
a little uncomfortable. But as you do this, you get better. And so when you're practicing this many times throughout the day, being aware of your state, where am I at on a scale of 1 to 10? When you wander, you bring yourself back, mental repetition many times throughout the day, the muscle gets stronger. You're spending more and more time here. And so when you add all these things up, there's not really any reason left why you wouldn't be at a 10. So you got all
Mhm.
your basics: eating, sleeping, working out, clean home, clean car, grooming, self-presentation, body language. That stuff in it by itself already shoots you up way higher than where most people are.
Right.
And then if state's not contingent on circumstance and it's not contingent on how we feel, that kind of X's out everything, right? Because everything's a feeling or a circumstance, but we can show up regardless.
Yeah.
And then if we have this kind of mental repetition thing in our tool belt of like bringing ourselves back many times throughout the day until it's you know really smooth, then we can really show up there the vast majority of the day, and we can bring ourselves back and we can know where the issues are. So for realtors, real estate is it's a very high ticket item, right? And
Mhm.
so every single time that someone goes into a listing appointment and they're not at a 10, let's take a cheaper house, right? Let's say the commission is like 6 grand. So you lost 6 grand at the listing, you just lost 6 grand at the buyer consultation. You didn't keep your deal together, you lost another 6 grand there. You're not lead generating, that's another 6 grand per month there.
Mhm.
It's like it really adds up to an enormous amount of money, just this one thing.
Right.
And so let's say, for example, you've got 10, 20, 30, 40 plus agents and you multiply it all out. And let's say their state is a 5 or a 6, assuming that it's average. Some of them might be lower,
Right.
and they're going into everything they do at a 5 or a 6. Like the amount of money we're talking about of someone showing up at a 10 versus a 5 or a 6 when they're selling a gigantic ticket item like a house,
Oh yeah.
it's enormous,
Mhm.
enormous. Um, so I would say kind of playing with those ideas of like, okay, so my state's around a 7. I'm doing very good in most of these things. How am I doing with the, states not contingent on how I feel? How am I doing with states not contingent on circumstance? Let me, for yourself, you can practice, okay, where's my state at on a scale of 1 to 10, which you're probably already very good at because, you're in law enforcement and you're a high producing realtor. But even if you can use some of these little things to bring yourself from a 7 to a 10, if you're making 200 grand or whatever it is in personal production, or 150 or whatever, it might take you to the 300 or 400 just because you went from a 7 to a 10 in everything you did. It really
Right.
is like that big of a difference. And then you can start to, I don't know if this was such a quick introduction. I don't know if you feel you could teach it all to your agents right away, but you can start to notice it or start to talk to them about that, and maybe start to introduce these things to them, at least in the quick version like we did.
Right.
um this is the first place that I really feel firmly that people get stuck. And for people who are very performance based, very 100% commission, high bonuses, whatever, their pay is largely dictated by performance.
Hmm.
This is the first thing, in my opinion, to fix. And when this is fixed, even that by itself is enormous return. And by the way, it's enormous return in personal life too. I would say the return is equal in personal life to business.
Right.
So for example, you're showing up at a 7, which is very good, and you're very good at a lot of these basics. But even a 7 versus a 10 for your wife, 7 versus a 10 for your kids, 7 versus a 10
Hmm.
for your friends, 7 versus a 10 for the way you look at yourself.
Right.
It's an incremental change, but it's still a big change, especially someone that's dealing with a lot. 7 to
Hmm.
a 10 for you, and then 7 for a 10 for all your people. So it multiplies a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
So those
exponential.
are, yeah, so those are some things you can think about that, again, you're already doing well at. But some minor tweaks can be very powerful. And then you can start to think about with your people, man. So, okay, even let's say the state of your people is like a 6 or 6.5, which is pretty good. You could be thinking, man, well, if I got all that to a 10, like, how would that change their production? And I can start to see how they're doing in some of these basic things and make sure that they're being faithful. The Bible talks about being faithful in the small things will be given larger things.
Right.
So
Hmm.
these are the small things, and you're doing a good job at them, but most people aren't, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's funny you say, because my passion is peak performance. And I joke with, like, even on the interviews that I do, is like I operate a peak performance like coaching business within a real estate business, because really that's, like you said, like your mindset's the foundation of everything. You're not going to be able to take effective action in your business. You're not going to be a good father, husband, mother,
Yeah.
so everything stems from mindset. So it's huge. So I know it's definitely a constant, flexing of that muscle, just like how you work out and everything and grow your muscles, your brain's the same way. So,
Yeah.
this, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I think especially in real estate, it's like I always say to people, one of the great things about real estate is it's not really a mystery what you should do.
Yeah, right.
Like you sort of know, like,
Hmm.
okay, people have houses. I want to sell houses. I know where houses are. I can see them. I can go up to the house and talk to them and see it. It's like, it's not
Right.
an invisible enemy. It's like, okay, I know what I should be doing. What makes it hard is it's all the things that nobody wants to do. And, there's a lot of reasons why almost nobody lead generates or almost nobody does these things. And the first reason I think is state. I
Hmm.
don't think it's possible to lead generate in a shitty state.
Oh
It's
yeah.
too scary, you know?
Yeah,
And when people feel like the phone is 1,000 pounds, or whatever they're doing is just like absolutely terrifying, I think this is the first reason why that is. And I
for
think this is the
sure.
first thing they have to fix to be able to do that stuff. Really does require a lot of energy to do all that, to do
Oh
it.
yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah. So cool. Well, I know we're at the 10:01. I don't want to make you late for something that you might have now, um but yeah, is that I know this call goes quickly and I try to fit in as much as I can, but was that helpful though?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's definitely, it helps to reflect and be able to talk things out, and really analyze, where you're showing up at, or how you're showing up, and so it definitely is helpful. So I appreciate your time too.
Definitely, man. Definitely. So you've got I'm out of production by January 1st, 2023. So that was a good insight that we have. And then,
Mhm.
you know, starting to think about where your agents are at with their state, and think about, okay, well, I'm at a 7. I'm already doing all these basics well. How am I doing with the state not contingent on circumstance, how I feel, my mental repetitions? Even though you're already good, maybe be like, man, if I could get myself to a 7 to a 10, I can I
Oh
can
yeah,
bring my agents with me, and I can improve everything. So small tweaks,
absolutely.
but when you're a high producing person, small tweaks can be very impactful. So
For sure. Absolutely.
All right, man. It
I
was
mean,
a
I
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Have a
Have
good
a good
one.
one.